Welcome back to another episode of Another Turnover, the basketball podcast where a basketball fan with no basketball credibility gives his opinions on what's going on in the NBA. Opinions that nobody asked for. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Chris Aaron Murphy, aka Aaron, and ladies and gentlemen, let's just jump right into it. Folks, we are back with episode 4 of season 6. This is the 97th episode overall. We are getting close. We are getting close to 90 plus 10, to 80 plus 20, plus 70 plus 30. We are getting close to the 100th episode, and I am very, very excited. But that's down the road. Let's talk about episode 97 overall. So, few topics of discussion. We've got some of the top performances of the week that I want to talk about. Of course, we got to talk about the big story in Nico Harrison being fired, the now former Dallas Mavericks general manager. Does he deserve all of the blame for the Mavericks struggles? We'll get into that a little bit later. And then the NBA is changing the All-Star format, the All-Star game format yet again. But does anybody care? All of that and more in today's episode of Another Turnover. But like I said, let's just jump right into it. So, top performances of the week. I got to talk about, there's quite a few, but I narrowed it down to 4 different performances that I wanted to highlight since we were last together last Friday. And this first one, this one pains me to talk about, but I got to give a shout out to the greatest shooter of all time, none other than Mr. Wardell Stephen Curry against San Antonio Wednesday night. Dropped 46 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, shot 5 of 16 from three-point range, which is not very efficient, but nonetheless, got to give him his credit where credit is due. The Golden State Warriors beat the San Antonio Spurs in a pretty good game, 125 to 120. So, shout out to you, Steph. I guess I got to give you props. Long season ahead for the San Antonio Spurs. Still 8-3 on the season. I think still, second in the West, if I'm not mistaken. But anyway, it's not about the Spurs. Steph Curry, got to give you your props. We also got to talk about Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Been having a great year as a whole, but this week in 29 minutes against the Los Angeles Clippers, I believe that was Wednesday or Tuesday, if I'm not mistaken. 30 points, 5 rebounds, 9 assists, and like I said, he did this in 29 minutes. He scored more points than minutes played, which is crazy. But the thing is, when I was doing my research for this particular show, this was his 7th time this year scoring 30 points at least in 30 minutes or less. I think he hasn't played the fourth quarter like 6 or 7 times this year, which is insane to think about. To score 30 points in the same amount of minutes is impressive. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander having another MVP caliber season so far this year. And then Nikola Jokic, of course, my preseason MVP pick, dropped 55 points, 12 rebounds, 6 assists against the Los Angeles Clippers this week. Just a phenomenal output. Beat like I said, the Los Angeles Clippers, the Denver Nuggets, that is, 130 to 116. So video game numbers, NBA 2K-like numbers for Nikola Jokic yet again. And then, of course, you know I had to do it. You know I had to shout out Victor Wembanyama. 31 points, 15 rebounds, 10 assists in that game against Golden State. Obviously, they lost, but a triple-double nonetheless. Shout out to Stephon Castle. He also had a triple-double in that game. They are now, I just learned before I was putting the show together, or went on air, Victor Wembanyama and Steph Castle are the youngest duo ever to have a triple-double in the same game, beating none other than Michael Jordan and Steph Curry, both 21 years old. Just phenomenal. But Victor Wembanyama also this same week had a 38-point showing, 12 rebound, 5 assists, 5 blocks against the Chicago Bulls in a game that they won. He actually hit the go-ahead bucket. They might have been up by 1 if I'm not mistaken, but an ISO 3 against Nikola Vucevic in the final few seconds of the game. Just crazy work from Victor Wembanyama. But had to shout out those 4 players. You got Steph Curry, SGA, Jokic, and Victor Wembanyama with the most memorable or top performances of the week thus far. But let's transition into probably the biggest story of the show this week. we've got the Dallas Mavericks firing GM Nico Harrison. So Dallas Mavericks relieve Nico Harrison of his GM duties just 9 months after trading star player Luka Doncic to the Lakers. So I have the NBA.com article pulled up here that I want to go over, and then I'll give my takes because I've got some thoughts about this one. So the Dallas Mavericks announced general manager Nico Harrison has been relieved of his duties as general manager. Team governor Patrick Dumont said Tuesday. The Mavs have appointed Michael Finley and Matt Riccardi as co-interim general managers as the team will begin a comprehensive search for a permanent replacement. So the article goes into a little bit of history here. It says the Mavs hired Nico Harrison in 2021. Announcing his addition to the team on the same day they announced the hiring of coach Jason Kidd, Harrison oversaw the team and its rise behind its then-star Luka Doncic as the Mavericks made the finals in 2024. Here we are, less than 2 years, 2024. Keep that in mind. Dallas lost that series 4-1, but seemingly had a bright future with Doncic and other key players in tow. However, Harrison and the Mavs stunned the NBA world last season when Doncic was dealt to the Los Angeles Lakers in a blockbuster 3-team trade in early February. Harrison later said he miscalculated the depth of love for his club's fans had for Luka Doncic before the trade that sent the young superstar to the Los Angeles Lakers for Anthony Davis. But despite the persistent catcalls from fans for him to be fired in the months since the deal, Harrison said he believed the trade was the right move for building a championship contender in Dallas. This is Nico Harrison quoted as saying, "I did know that Luka was important to the fan base. I didn't quite know to what level." Anyway, Harrison was the general manager. He has now been fired. Obviously, lots of scrutiny with the trade, getting Anthony Davis and, all that stuff. But, here's my whole thing. I talked about it a little bit last season, if I'm not mistaken, but I don't ever know if I went into in depth. But the whole Luka Doncic trade to me just screams shady. First off, no one in the NBA knew that he was available for a trade. As good of a player as Luka Doncic is, nobody in the NBA knew that he was available for a trade. If you were going to trade a player of his caliber, wouldn't you want every team to offer their best? Like, that makes logical sense, right? If I'm getting rid of arguably this generational talent, top 3 in the NBA, MVP caliber, wouldn't I want to hear every team's best offer? Now, the only team that got a chance to bid for him of all teams in the NBA was the Los Angeles Lakers. And on top of that, all you got, and this is no shade, but all you got was Anthony Davis. I mean, Anthony Davis, don't get me wrong, is good. When he is healthy, if he is healthy, that is a big if he is healthy. He is a solid player. You could argue top 10, top 15 when healthy. But he's not Luka Doncic. That's the problem. That would be like the Spurs trading Wemby, or the Bucks trying to trade Giannis, or the Thunder trying to trade SGA. That's just, you just don't trade a player like that unless they ask for a trade, which Luka Doncic did not ask for a trade. But the second thing, why I think this whole thing is shady, after trading a top 3 player in the league in his prime, who did not ask to be traded, with less than 2% odds, the Dallas Mavericks get the number 1 pick in the draft. And who is the projected, widely speculated number 1 consensus pick in the draft this past year? None other than Cooper Flagg, who's projected to be a star, in the course of his career at some point. Obviously, he's a rookie. Give him some time. Averaging 15 points, 7 rebounds right now. But what a coincidence that the league's most popular team gets an MVP caliber player in his time that did not ask to be traded, who already has a star who's, on the tail end of his career in LeBron James, on his way out. You have a player, Luka Doncic, that you get that did not ask to be traded. And then the team that traded him, the Dallas Mavericks, get a projected star right afterwards in Cooper Flagg. Now, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I promise I'm not a conspiracy theorist. But does that not seem off to anybody else? Okay, you trade away one of the biggest stars in the NBA, and then you get the number one pick in the draft with less than 2% chance odds to get it. That is this not clicking to anybody else? So Nico, he gets fired. Nico Harrison gets fired. If we take everything at face value, this was the right call. I mean, I'm not one that likes to advocate for somebody to lose their job. I'm not saying he should have been fired or he should be without a job. He should never work again. I'm not saying that. But trading Luka was an incredibly poor decision on Nico Harrison's part. You don't trade a player like that. You just don't. I mean, what Luka was to Dallas is what Steph is to Golden State, or now Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is to Oklahoma City. You don't trade a player like that unless they ask for a trade and there's some extenuating circumstances. But, all of that, all that to say, this leads to another angle in all of this. Do we really believe that Nico Harrison acted alone and made this decision to trade Luka Doncic on his own? So this is my thing. We're just supposed to believe that Nico Harrison decided to trade the city of Dallas's biggest cash cow all by himself. Like that, come on now. The decision to trade Luka Doncic had to include ownership at some point or another. Some people are like, oh, they just signed off on it. Like, no, ownership was involved. Like, you cannot tell me otherwise that ownership was not involved in this trade. There's no way that ownership was not included. A general manager has, a good amount of authority and a level of autonomy when it comes to basketball decisions. But a decision like this, the owners absolutely were involved. I understand, the fans were chanting fire Nico and whatnot, but no one is calling for ownership to sell the team or to be held accountable. At least not what I've seen in mass. That's not happening. So I think two things can be true at one time. I think that Nico Harrison made a terrible trade, and he's also being scapegoated at the same time. I was reading the Dallas Mavericks governor, Patrick Dumont. He wrote a letter to fans, basically saying, I'm, paraphrasing here or summarizing, but he's aware of the profound impact that these difficult last several months have had. And he also, in the letter that he wrote, thanked the fans for holding the team accountable and their passion. Thanked the fans, for holding the team accountable and for their passion and patience as Dallas has gotten off to a 3-8 start this season. So now I'm not going to accuse the Mavs governor of using ChatGPT to write that letter, but it just seems like there's a huge lack of accountability in the ownership for their part in all of this. People saying that the GM is the one that makes all the basketball decisions. I mean, to a degree, yes, but a decision like this, a decision of this caliber, the general manager does not have the full autonomy to make that decision. At least, I don't think so. Do I work in the NBA? Do I know all the inner workings of the NBA? No, but this is an opinion show, and in my opinion, that doesn't happen. Again, Nico Harrison deserves all the smoke for making a terrible call for wanting to trade Luka Doncic, but I believe that the ownership should be just as culpable in the aftermath of this Luka trade. But I don't know. What do I know, right? I'm just a fan. I'm just a San Antonio Spurs fan. I don't even know why I'm getting worked up about this. I want the Dallas Mavericks to be bad, but the whole thing seemed shady to me. It just does. But let's transition again. Let's talk about the All-Star Game. The NBA All-Star Game is making changes yet again. So the 2026 NBA All-Star Game will debut a new USA versus World format. So what does that mean? There will be 3 teams. 2 USA teams, 1 world team or 1 international team, however you want to put it. There will be 4 games total, 12 minutes each for each game. They'll basically be playing like a round robin style. If you don't know what that means, each team will play the other 2 teams. So let's say you got Team USA A is going to play Team USA B, and then they're going to play the international team. And then you got Team USA B is going to play Team USA A, and then the international team is going to play Team USA A, Team USA B. So the fourth game in all of that will be the championship. It'll be the top 2 teams from the round robin. So basically whoever has the better record in those first 3 games. So the All-Stars will be 24 players like it normally is, 12 from each conference like it normally is. However, a change this year, there will be no position restrictions, meaning it's the 12 best players from the West and the 12 best players from the East, regardless of their position. So my opinion, my take in all of this, I'm not opposed to this format. It's something different. I think it's kind of cool, but I just don't think this is going to motivate the players to care more about this game. That's been the biggest issue with the NBA All-Star game. The players clearly do not care. So yeah, change the format, change it up. They've done multiple changes in the format over the past, 5 or 6 years, if not longer. But I just don't think this is going to motivate the players to care any more about the game. Maybe, and just maybe, a big maybe, I wrote it in all caps, the United States players will be somewhat motivated and try harder not to lose to the international guys. I was counting up the international guys, the all-star level international guys, and man, they're deep. You got Luka, you got Wemby, you got Jokic, you got Giannis, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, he's from Canada, so he's an international player. All those guys on the same team, I mean, they're going to be hard to beat. But then again, are those international guys going to care? Are they going to try harder? So we shall see. I think ultimately I'm open to the change. I'm not saying that I'm thrilled about it. I'm open to the change, but I just don't see how this is going to fix the lack of motivation from the NBA players. But we shall see. Last transition here. Let's talk about marquee matchups. So if you've been playing, of course, you play marquee matchups every single week. You got a chance to win a $25 Amazon gift card. So far, we have done 3 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, this will be the 4th week coming up. Last week, we had the bum Houston Rockets taking on the San Antonio Spurs. And of course, the San Antonio Spurs won 121-110. Just like I picked, I was the only one to pick the San Antonio Spurs in marquee matchups. I was the only one right. Just saying, I've got the receipts if you want to challenge it. But this week, we will actually have a Saturday game. This will be a Saturday night game on NBA TV, 7 p.m. Central Time, 8 p.m. Eastern Time. You've got the Los Angeles Lakers taking on the Milwaukee Bucks. So that'll be the marquee matchup for this week. Again, marquee matchups will be posted on pretty much all my socials, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, I believe those 3. And I'm looking forward to it. It'll be on NBA TV. I don't have NBA TV, but nonetheless, I'm looking forward to the highlights. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that is all the show I have for you fine folks. As I always say, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching. As I always say as well, like, share, subscribe, leave comments, follow Another Turnover at Another Turnover on all of the socials. I would greatly appreciate it. But plenty of great sports this weekend. Lots of sports action if you're a sports fan. Not, just basketball, but you've got football still in full swing. You've got hockey if you're into hockey. You know what they say about hockey. Do that hockey. And then you even got volleyball. Volleyball is on the tail end of its season, or coming up on the tail end of its season. Well, no, I think they got about a month left. NCAA volleyball, that is. I've been a big fan of Nebraska volleyball over the past year. My wife and I have really got into it. But anyway, ton of sports out there, so make sure to tune in. But as I always say, be sure to stay safe, take care, and I will see you next week. Peace.